Welcome to The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a production of LibertyNation.com, hosted by Mark Angelides.
As a culture, we're inspired by stories of heroes. Some true, some fictional, some a mix of both. But it seems that we're entering an age where there are no more heroes. Where are our Charlemagnes, our Joan of Arcs, our George Washingtons, and our Winston Churchills? We've begun the age of mediocrity, and are setting a pace that may make genuine heroes little more than a historical footnote. The question must be why. First, we need to figure out what exactly makes a person heroic. Alexander the Great is regarded as an embodiment of all that is heroic, brave, smart, achieving the impossible. But to the Persians of the time, he would more be considered a villain. It's all about perspective. A hero to one side and a monster to the other. Much like, as Lemony Snicket writes in his 13-book saga, A Series of Unfortunate Events, quote, "People aren't either wicked or noble. They're like chef's salads, with good things and bad things, chopped and mixed together in a vinaigrette of confusion and conflict." End quote. Perhaps the best measure of a hero is one whom history has allowed to follow the Latin adage, vincit qui patita, or roughly, he who endures ultimately conquers. The man or woman whose tale is told forevermore in a positive light is regarded as a hero, and he who is denigrated by those victors, who eventually write the history, are always the villains. It seems time and revisionism seek to make villains of us all. And when we're all villains, by the new modern standard, there can never really be another hero. Yet this is only a single branch of a greater tree. We also appear to have lost sight of what makes a hero. So often we hear folks talk about their heroes as sports players, musicians, actors, or even politicians. It's difficult to compare the first three with the likes of Churchill or Martin Luther King. But politicians certainly can be heroic. It's just so rare that they actually are. Consider the usual career trajectory of a modern politician in just about any Western nation. They go to university to study politics or law or economics, get a cushy job with a party-affiliated firm, and wait for their spot on the ladder. And then they spend a decade or two or three climbing the ranks, and all of a sudden they want to declare themselves a radical, ready to change the world. These are phony people who seek legacy and grandeur, and sadly, there are folks willing to give that to them. So what is a real hero? We can perhaps all agree that to title one such requires personal bravery, courage, often sacrifice. But is there a harder to define quality? The philosopher Aristotle wrote, quote, "There are men so godlike, so exceptional, that they naturally, by right of their extraordinary gifts, transcend all moral judgment or constitutional control. There is no law which embraces men of that caliber. They are themselves law." End quote. This is about as good a definition as one can get. And we can see that such words really don't describe our modern politicians. So it's not just the revisionism and cultural mores that stop us having new heroes. It's also the ordering of present society. Aristotle says that heroes transcend constitutional control and that they're a law unto themselves. With our rigid structures of control nowadays, even those who seek to do good, if they go against the framework permitted by our rulers, they're cast down from the heights they once may have reached. We have allowed what was once simple scaffolding to become the bars of a prison that cage us. Could it be because the actual state fears the very idea of a hero? In the United Kingdom in 2017, 3 terrorists struck on London Bridge. First, they rammed pedestrians with a van, then they got out with long knives strapped to their wrists wearing fake suicide vests. 8 people were killed and almost 50 injured, including 4 unarmed police officers. One man who tried to fight the attackers, himself unarmed, was Roy Larner. Instead of running, he fought, shouting, "F you, I'm Millwall," referring to his favourite football team. Larner received multiple stab and slash wounds, about 80 stitches, and was left for dead. According to the Daily Mail newspaper, CCTV footage showed him lying on the floor, raising his fists once again. But the state doesn't want heroes. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Lana was convicted of spitting at a photographer and hurling racist abuse. A perfect hero? Certainly not, but heroic in his actions. How was Lana rewarded by the government for holding up the terrorists until the armed police could arrive? He was placed on a terrorist watch list for being a potential radical, monitored by the police and security services, and made to attend de-radicalization classes. And what of more well-known heroes? What about Winston Churchill? The British government's stance towards Adolf Hitler and the rise of Nazi Germany was appeasement. In 1938, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned from the Munich Agreement announcing, quote, "The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. This morning I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler, and here is the paper which bears his name upon it, as well as mine. Some of you, perhaps, have already heard what it contains, but I would just like to read it to you. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again." End quote. Later that day he uttered the historic phrase, "My good friends, for the second time in history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany bringing peace with honour. I believe it is peace for our time. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Go home and get a nice quiet sleep," he said. A year later, Hitler invaded Poland. Churchill found this unbearable. He sought to build a defence against what he saw as the rot at the heart of British politics. He was not popular among his own party, and certainly not among the opposition party. Yet he fought for the right to fight tyranny. In 1940 he said, quote, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. You ask, what is our policy? I will say, it is to wage war. By sea, land and air, with all our might and with all the strength that God can give us. To wage war against a monstrous tyranny, never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask what is our aim? I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory. However long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival." End quote. For more than half a century, Churchill's role in winning World War II cast him as the greatest of Britons. He is a hero to many for his courage, his strength, and perhaps most importantly, his opposition to the status quo at the time. Yet even he has fallen under the axe of politically correct revisionism. His life has been scrutinised under the microscope of progressive orthodoxy and been found wanting. His statue in London graffitied with the words racist. And there is a push to teach young children not of his heroism, but of his all too human failings. As mentioned earlier, heroes, real heroes, are a mixed bag. No one is perfect. Heroes of the past have flaws, but by denying their heroism, we're not only removing the legacies, we're destroying the possibility of creating new heroes. With no examples of heroism around a new generation, they will look to the pre-packaged phonies who are presented for sale and consumption to a public hungry for something, anything magical. This is what we're being denied by this audacious sweep to only permit state-sponsored heroes. We're losing the magic and the promise of the future.
Go deeper on the topic discussed in this video, head on over to one of these links here or go to our Liberty Nation Roku channel. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Liberty.
The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a LibertyNation.com production.
Available at Libsyn, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, on Roku, and other fine podcast providers.